What's this like for you, David? I mean, you had a chance to interview Leon and Bernadette, and now you're chatting with us all here.
Yeah.
What's the experience like for you right now?
I am levitating. This is a levitational experience. This is surreal because like 7-year-old me. 7-year-old me is inside of this me, and he's like, "What the hell is going on?" And also to talk with you all because adulthood is a great leveler. And Leon talked to me about the flip side of Zoom. That Zoom was the aspirational perfect world, but I talked about the Boston busing crisis. And Leon, you told me, this didn't even make it into the book, that that cab ride with Bernadette and Lori was the idealized version of what desegregation would look like. But Leon experienced the worst case scenario of having stuff thrown at your bus, right? And being pelted with stuff. And so, yeah.
I mean, even to this day, okay, Bernadette, last night I was riding my bike, and the little girl who lives my neighbor across the way from me, she saw me and screamed, "Ah, mommy!" I still to this day experience these issues that people have. Where I just stopped to turn on my lights so that I could be seen, and then she saw the lights doing all this. I got these lights all wrapped all around the bike, and they do all kind of crazy designs. The lights. Aww. And I was like, yes. But you gotta see, you gotta see this. And I try and see that in every person, because we all have a drum. We're all a drum. Our heart beats a rhythm.
Yeah.
And we all can communicate. So,
and I think all the listeners and viewers need to know that Leon is a professional percussionist. So he comes by this really honestly.
Yes, he is. World famous.
Oh, thank you. I just do what I do.
This is part of what I'm really hoping for is we're at this really weird time globally, this pandemic. And we've been speaking about this on the Dr. Joe show. This is the great equalizer. The coronavirus doesn't say, well, I'm only going to pick on this group. I mean, there's some to that, maybe with age, but in general, everyone's vulnerable. We're all in this together. And that's part of what we're really hoping to sort of reframe what's going on here. There's no question this is a scary time, and it's horrible. People are dying, and we mourn that. But the other side of it is we're all in this together, and this is this moment, and that's why I think the timing of this book. My guess is, David, you were not planning on publishing the book during a pandemic. But
it was not part of the campaign that we drew up. No, pandemic was not on the list.
It was not on the list, but it is remarkable timing that the book is coming out now. And when it comes to timing, the other thing that is remarkable, that is really the timing for our first commercial break. And so we're going to listen to our sponsors, but we'll be right back. Dr. Joe Show. Stay right where you are.
And we're back with the Dr. Joe Show, talking about a time that we can all reflect on, an honest time, a time for sunny days that hopefully are here again with author David Kamp and some of the members of Zoom, Leon Mobley, Bernadette Yao, and of course, Dr. Joe Schran from Zoom. Started at Zoom, 1970.
Yeah, we started in 72. We actually started, I think the pilot was 71, and then really took off in 72. So kind of nutty. And it was a difficult time in my life as well, not for the same reasons, but my parents were going through a pretty brutal divorce, and it was Zoom was a haven where all of a sudden there was a place that was welcoming and calm and loving, and it was just such an important part. I mean, it was humor also. My mother used to say she was a divorcee, but always wanted to be a widow. But that was just my mother's sort of dark sense of humor. So while we're off air, we're talking a little bit about some of the political background that was going on then in the 60s and 70s. But also, we're also mentioning, and David, I appreciate bringing him up, talking about Christopher Sarson. Christopher Sarson was, the creator of Zoom. Hello, Leon's back. And you had a chance to interview Christopher, right, David? So you want to just talk about what he was saying about Zoom?
Yeah, Christopher, for those of you who don't know, Christopher Sarson was a producer at WGBH, an Englishman who, with his wife, moved here and was raising kids. And the whole impetus for him, in fact, wanting to start a program like this was kind of, he witnessed in his own kids some of the shyness and social reluctance that Bernadette earlier described. How do kids, when they're in that on the cusp of teenage years, when they're 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, how could he help them navigate these situations better? And how could he use kids to model good behavior? And he said it's so much better when kids are learning rather than being taught. And the big distinction there was, one thing that was distinct about Zoom is that you never saw adults on screen. Even though I know there were adults kind of off camera who were giving you prompts occasionally, to the viewer at home, who is me and my sister and every other kid in America, you didn't see other adults, you didn't see any adults on the screen. And so you saw kids kind of self-moderating. And as I say in the book, the result wasn't a Hobbesian state of nature like Lord of the Flies. The result was this, it wasn't always easy. It could be bumpy. I remember Tishy, who was a member of one of the casts, talking about how, Puerto Ricans should stick with Puerto Ricans and blacks should stick with blacks, etc. But the way that these sort of thorny situations were navigated, that's what Christopher Sarson wanted. And he was a real visionary for wanting to do this. And again, I'm rambling, but Joe, can you give me one more beat on this?
Go ahead.
Okay. Joan Gans Cooney, who's another one of the big heroes of my book, she co-created Sesame Street. She has a great quote where she said, in the late 60s and early 70s, there was so much bad news. There was the Vietnam War, there were Kent State shootings, ecological apocalypse seemingly about to happen. And she said, people are watching TV and looking at the TV and saying, so do something. And she said, and one day the television did something. And what she's talking about is that she did something, Christopher Sarson did something, Fred Rogers did something. They thought, let's start from and Marlo Thomas of Free to Be You and Me, let's start from the ground up. Let's blow it up and start it all over again by getting kids to realize that they could live in a better world than the one that we adults are struggling through.
I'm so glad that you took that beat, because that's it. And
but Leon looks pretty tired. I think I wore Leon out with that ramble.
Yeah.
No. I'm wide.
Just in a different time zone.
Not here in Hawaii.
But when I was reading through your book, I've told this to Christopher many times, how much that experience influenced my entire career as a psychiatrist. Certainly as a kid, but the idea of having kids talking with other kids, peer-to-peer. I mean, that's drug story theater. I mean, that's what drug story theater is. It's a group of kids going through their struggles with addiction, trying to help other kids not go down that road. The idea of value and respect, which is what Zoom was all about, that we're all in this together, that there's an integration. It has absolutely created the foundation for everything that I have done. The I am approach is absolutely right out of Zoom. The idea that, we're all doing the best we can, that we all want the same thing. We just want to feel valued. And that's what Zoom really was. I mean, that's the stories that I hear from every one of these Zoom kids. It just reminded us of our value. And that's what we were hoping to do. We didn't know it. We didn't know that's what we were doing. But that's who we are as human beings. Babies are not born with these bias. babies are born thinking that they're actually just one big baby. There's a connection. You don't form the identity or even the realization that you're a separate person until months and months and months into your life. You know, and I just get overwhelmed by this, because that's part of the message that we were trying to do with Zoom. That's what we're doing here. And David, that's what you've been able to capture. So I'm so grateful for that.
Stretch the canvas.